the head of communications at the Competitions Commission. It is an honor to have you here, Sipho. Relax, I don't bite, I promise. So we're just going to have a conversation around you, your biggest blunder, and then the biggest lesson that you've learned from that blunder. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to you to just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and I think mainly how you made your way into the Competitions Commission.
Good evening, thank you very much. My name is Sipho Ngwema. I'm from Cape Town. I was born in Cape Town, grew up there, then from there, I think while I was still there, I was a student activist, which then drove me to journalism. And that's where I met Rams 34 years ago, around this time, when we were registering there. So after that, I joined, I think Sangam. I'll start with Sangam, I'll leave the rest. And this is where my passion for what is called industrial journalism grew. And this is where I was taught to have a focused way of communication, strategic way of communicating, particularly in terms of how you promote the institution, how you promote the values, and how you make sure that the interests of the institution are always protected and always you're able to communicate what happens there. And of course, after that, I joined a number of other organizations. I was at IDASA, and this is where, and then when I was at IDASA, having been part of quality assurance, when I was at IDASA, then I was recruited by Parliament, by the National Council of Provinces. And then that's how my route to the NBA came through, because my head at the time, who was Mulelani Nyoka, was appointed as the National Director of Public Prosecutions. And as you know, it was nothing. There were just 11 different attorneys general, and we had to bring them together. So he took myself and the Chief of Staff to go and conceptualize the office, virtually start everything from scratch, and that's how I then later in life ended up with the Competition Commission.
Wow, okay. So one thing that stood out for me is you saying that you learned at Sanlam the importance of strategically communicating the values of the company or the brand. Now that is so important, right? I think especially when you start your business, you have your mission, you have your vision, and you have your values. And some of us go on to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT for those values, right? Which is obviously cheating the system or hacking the system. But it's so important, I think, to be able to internalize those values. Something that has become extremely important for me over the years, because you have to get people on board that's not just going to support your vision, but that is aligned to those values. And so I think it's not just about communicating those values, but it's really internalizing it and living it on a daily basis. So if integrity and honesty is one of your key values, then there's no way that you're going to be in Kenya and paying a bribe to close a deal with Samsung, which was what I had to do, right? I had to say, no, I'm not going to pay a bribe. And even if it means I go back to Joburg broke, I'd rather go broke than be going against my values. And I think what is so important to note from that, Sipho, is especially as Africans and a continent marred by corruption, that a fresh generation, or even us seasoned veterans in this space, have to counter that narrative by our values. And I think it's Lewis House, also one of my favorite podcasters, and in a romantic context said that your values, your vision, and your lifestyle has to align in order for a romantic relationship to make sense. Now, because I'm not in a romantic relationship, I said, okay, let me look at it from a business perspective. And it applies. You have to surround yourself with people that share your values, your vision, and your lifestyle. Okay, so let me get off my soapbox. Sipho, share with us what has been the biggest blunder, just one, that has probably impacted you the most on your journey.
Thank you. I think let me just let you know what you have just said with regards to values, with regards to mission and vision. In 1999, we were called because one of the biggest challenges was crime and corruption, and we had to conceptualize a unit that would fight crime and corruption. And of course, this is how eventually the Scorpions were born. But what was important with that is that we then had a number of study tours during that period. Went to the UK, went to Cuba, went to the US. And I must say that I was very impressed with how the Americans do their stuff, particularly with regards to communication. And unfortunately for us, we don't empower, we don't affirm communicators. And I think I'll come back when I talk about my blunders later. But I think at the end of the day, when we then coined the slogan, loved by the people, respected by peers, and feared by the enemy, we knew exactly in every line who we were talking to and how we were going to get to those people. So yes, that's very important, and I think that's why you find that key to that unit's operation was making sure that you talk to your public, making sure that there's a little bit of transparency, because this is how you win public confidence. And public confidence was key because that's where you get your legitimacy. So then we left for one reason or the other. We exited government. And my principal had left a few months later. And because communication was my passion, and I said, can I join you 6 months because I have to help the guy going to act after you have left. And he agreed. So he left, he formed a company called Amapois, which was an equity investment company. And by the way, one thing that people don't know is that PE is a Sanlam concept. And this is why Sanlam sold the Metropolitan to black people, thinking that this is how they were going to empower themselves. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day. But those discussions took place while I was there. And that's why black people were identified in order for them to empower themselves. But then they left. They went to start this. After a while, and when the guy that I was helping was not appointed, I then followed. It was nice, good perks, far better than government. But also there's this new culture that is developing of black people, very strong middle class, beautiful cars and so on. But I wanted to cover a niche on entertainment, and then came a deal which I thought was very attractive. There was a new concept of people were going to download music, and then we were going to set up these viewboxes. And at the time, this was transition now between CDs and what now we have the digital music and streaming. And at the time, we didn't do our research. And there were one or two guys who said, this is what is coming. And I thought, no, black people still have their Wi-Fi, their hi-fis and everything. And said, if there's a beautiful song that we don't have, we will just go over the viewbox, download it for 10 bucks. And we got all the acronyms virtually from everybody, met EMI and everybody else. We had a good discussion with Joshua Doe, and they were then going to put this in their in their furniture stores, which is good. And I think there were one or two other retailers. And our contact at Joshua Doe got into trouble. Of course, later we all know that Joshua Doe got into trouble. And a few months later, I don't want to get into that story, we lost 15 million bucks. And it was my fault because I was too excited. I saw this, we were signing contracts, people were giving us their music, and we saw other things that we could download there, books, everything, right? You just put your download and then you're able to. We saw solutions to education and everything else, and we lost 15 million. Which brings me back to, I said later, I lost my confidence and I thought, no, this is not my space. It was fine. There were 1, 2 small things we were doing. The big guys were really rainmakers, you know. As a shareholder, it was good. But for myself, I thought, no, that 50 million, I could still feel that. But if I lose another 30 million later, so I need to exit the space. And the guys tried to convince me, but I knew that it had killed my confidence. And I thought that let me go back to what I thought I was good at. And then in the end, we were listed out, I remained friends, I remained a business partner. But at the end of the day, what I learned there is that sometimes specialization is very important. And I think this is what I carried through throughout, to say, even though you get calls, go and be a CEO there, and it's good to be a CEO, we are in charge. But I remember when we were students, we would argue, why take a teacher that is good at science and make him a principal? Because they are moving now from being able to produce the science students to being an administrator. And you may replace him with someone who's not as good. So there are strengths that sometimes some of us don't have, and we have to accept it. And there are others who can come with those strengths and complement what you're doing, and you can be able to achieve a lot. And I think what then that taught me was that I think specialization for me, it's good for me, it's working for me, and I don't see myself going to areas where I suspect that I may not be as good if I'm good at what I'm doing. And therefore, I think that the foundation of what I always do is to try and surround myself with people that probably know the stuff better than I do, that I learn from them. But also I think there's something that I bring to the table, and we are able together as a team to be able to achieve those things. So I've stayed in my space. I'm enjoying the competition commission. Right now we deal with our potatoes and tomatoes and airplane ticket flights and so on. It's good. We're able to interact with the consumer, we're able to interact with the people that we have to talk to. So the long and short of what I'm trying to say is that I have thought, or I have learned over time that sometimes, in as much as all of us have got a vision to achieve many things, but there are many great people that I see every day that specialize in their areas, they are good in them, and they don't want to. When I think I'm compatible with that crowd.
That is so powerful, Sipho. And we say this to entrepreneurs that we train all the time. Find your one thing. If we look at the top 5 richest people in the world, and unfortunately at this point it's still white males, I'm looking for females that can make that list. But if you look at them, they all do one thing. And I think it goes back to finding your passion and flowing from that place of passion. And so then it becomes less about hustling and to pay the bills, and it really becomes about building an asset of value. I think the other important thing that stands out for me is the lack of research that led to losing 15 million. I hear you on the specialization, which is extremely important to find your one thing. But it's also the lack of research and knowing what was coming. Yes, we don't all have a crystal ball, but I think if I think back 20 years ago, sitting in my mother's lounge, starting my first business, I probably had to ask Jeeves. I don't think we had Google then. I had to ask Jeeves what to do. But now it's so easy to do that research. And I think for any founder that is thinking about either launching a new product in the existing business, or if you're a professional wanting to launch out into your own business, to really do your homework. And even if that homework takes 18 months, even if it takes 2 years before you exit your professional space, it's all good. But you'd rather do that research beforehand to know that, you're covering all of your bases so that you don't lose 15 million rand. That's painful. What? Physical. So when you said you felt it, I felt it with you. Okay, Sipho, any parting words for our audience today?
Nothing much to say, except that I think, as you were saying, we still have the same attitude towards AI. I don't think we take it serious, and I don't think we realize that 10 years, 5 years from now, we have to reinvent ourselves. And I think that sometimes we don't learn these lessons until they hit us. I think we need to be much more agile, much more flexible, in order for us to be able to meander our lives. And one of the other, look, I must say, from a law enforcement point of view, I think one of the blunders we make was not to charge Jacob Zuma. And I think we are living with the consequences of that now. So I'm saying it is important to make sure that when you take decisions, you are not taking them for now. You are taking them. This is 30 years later, after we failed to do the right thing. Of course, there were all sorts of considerations, but we didn't take into account of the future. And I think that when we take decisions correctly, we need to apply our minds, refine the way we think, be rational, because at the end of the day, the decisions that we take have an impact, a huge impact, not on us, but on the country in general, or even the world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sipho. It's been such an honor to chat to you. I think you've left us with a very important message today: to find your one thing and to stick to it, to love it so much that you don't have a side chick. Find your one thing. Thanks, Sipho.